Hi, this is Carl. Welcome. So today, remember our friend, the sales funnel? Well, we're going to revisit our friend, the sales funnel, but we're going to start by taking apart some of the pieces because today's lesson is all about why every single piece of your sales process has to do its job. And it's not just because you are a crummy boss and you always want to make people work really, really hard. No, it's because you're a good salesperson and you need to make sure that every single thing you do holds up its part of the team. Welcome to episode 6 of the Cheeky Sales Coach. Before we get into too much detail, I did want to make a couple of notes about the class. So first of all, we have a sales funnel construction kit to download from the cheekysalescoach.com website. That's for paid subscribers. So you don't have to download it, you don't have to pay anything, but you can make your own. It's pretty straightforward. If you go through the videos we've done so far, you'll know what you need to create a campaign and a sales funnel, okay? So the pieces are fairly straightforward, but we've just put together a workbook that makes it a little bit easier. If you're a paid subscriber, that's available at, as part of this subscription. Also, I just wanted to let you know, we have gone through the trouble of putting in subtitles for all of our videos. So what basically the process is, I upload a video and YouTube puts on crappy titles and then I send it off to a service called Rev, and they put in amazing and spectacular captions that are actually useful. And then I download that and I use the timestamps from that to put in chapters down below. So I'm going to link down below to a video where I describe all of this and exactly the process that I go through. So you can look at that. But in the meantime, just know that all of the Cheeky Sales Coach, and in fact, all of the content videos at the Relax, Focus, Succeed YouTube channel now have captions and chapters. So exactly what do we mean when we say every single piece of your process has to do its job? Well, first of all, let's look at what are the pieces of your process. Here you see we have a very simplified sales process. So it starts with leads. So the leads have to do their job. In other words, they have to be good leads. And then you got to warm them up. So what does that mean? Well, if you buy a name, it's cold. It's a cold lead. There's no way they're buying anything from you. Why would they? So you got to warm them up. Okay, so that piece of it has to work. Next, you have a call down script, and it has to do its job. So if you have a bad script, you're going to know right away you're getting no response, right? So that script has to be good, and most scripts need some fine-tuning once you start the call down, but at least you're going to know what's going on. Next up, you need an offer, and your offer has to be good. It has to get people's attention. If you call people and you say, hey, you don't want to buy a bunch of crap you don't need, the answer is going to be, well, no, as a matter of fact, I don't. Click, have a nice day. Well, they may not say have a nice day because they've already hung up on you by then. You can't have a bad offer, but you got to figure out what offer you want to make. How does it fit with the bigger picture? How much is it going to cost you? And how appealing it is to the list that you are focusing on. Next, you have an appointment setting process. So however you go about that, whether it's a Zoom appointment or it's an in-person appointment, you're going to show up at somebody's office, make a formal presentation, have a casual lunch, whatever it is, it has to work. So you have to have a process for each piece of this, and that includes the appointment process. Next, you have to have a proposal that does its job. So you can't just say, oh, we talked about this, we talked about that, let me give you a proposal, and then expect somebody to sign it right away. Very often that proposal process is actually a negotiation process. So the proposal has to be in a format that's easy to understand, And sometimes the answer is going to be no. But as long as you get a no quickly and you don't waste your time, it's not the worst thing in the world. Okay, it's pretty bad, don't get me wrong, but it's not the worst thing in the world. So finally, you've got the contract. So the contract also has to do its job. It's got to define what the relationship is for the next stage, which is outside of your hands, right? For the most part, if you are the salesperson, you are probably not delivering the service, the goods, whatever. So that contract has to represent what has gone on before. So bottom line is every piece of this process has to do its job. Now let me talk to you about another important aspect, which is entropy. The word of the day is entropy. Why are we talking about entropy in a class on sales? Well, here's the deal. Stuff just falls apart. You know, one of my themes for my entire life is that nothing happens by itself. And the reason that that's true is that left to itself, the only thing that things do is they begin to decay and fall apart. So when you look at the pieces of your funnel, and your funnel may be far more complicated than the simple example that I gave here. When you look at the pieces of your funnel, each one of them needs a certain amount of attention. So you pay a lot of attention to the leads. Great, that's awesome. You got great leads. And then, while you're paying attention to the leads, the appointment setting process kind of falls apart. And so you go fix the appointment setting process. And while you're doing that, your script kind of goes off sideways because too many changes have been made along the way, or you're responding to a certain amount of feedback from the leads that you've got, right? So each piece of the process has to do its job. And I will give you a super clear example from the 21st century. This is the way, starting in January 2021, this is the way a lot of sales are going to be done. You start at the top of your funnel with an ad, and the ad says, hey, go to this website and register for our webinar. We want to talk to you about our product or our service. Cool. All right. So they send people to the page, and then nobody registers. And why is that? Well, and this is a real world example. So I'm not going to say the name of the company or whatever, but I was working with a company, and they paid me to promote a certain web page. And then they said, hey, we're only getting a handful of people signing up. I said, well, that's interesting. I looked at my stats. Looks like I sent you, and I think it was 1,186 clicks. These are people who literally clicked on a button that said, register now. And what happened was they landed on a page that couldn't close the deal. Right? So I actually sent them a note and I said, hey, we can help you rewrite this page. We can help you get to the next step. Whatever's on that page, it's not doing the job. And so each piece of the process has to do its job. The ad has to do its job. The page you go to has to do its job. Once people sign up, the thank you page has to do its job. When people show up for the webinar, or just even the process of getting them to show up for the webinar, because a lot of times people won't show up for something if they haven't paid for it. I'm amazed at how many people don't show up when they have paid for it. But anyway, that's a side story. So each piece of the process has to do its job. So what does that mean to you and me as people running a sales organization? Well, here's the deal. I have to do my job. You have to do your job. You see, that's the bottom line, is to fight entropy. We have to have part of our process be to continuously improve the process. Now you have to decide where the stop points are, but pretty much when you define your funnel, you have defined the major steps that need some attention. And so, if you've got an appointment process that really, really, really works, and it's golden, and you've used it for years and years and years, and it's just been awesome forever, that's awesome, that's amazing, that's good. But remember, from time to time, it might need a tune-up. So some things you tune up all the time. You're constantly, if you're buying lists or you're going to meetings, local groups, networking groups and so forth, and you're trying to get new leads that you want to be warmed up, well, that's an ongoing thing, and it's going to be a little different every time, right? And as the year goes on, January, February, March, well, the processes that you use to get those leads and to clean them and to warm them are going to change over time. And you may have an entire change process throughout the year where that's something you're constantly doing. On the other hand, you might have an appointment process that works really, really well, and it really only needs to be overhauled maybe once every couple of years. Whatever it is, you should know how often these things need to be fixed, how often they need to be tuned up. And if you can't do it, that's cool. That's what other people's children are for. Hire somebody to help you rewrite the copy. Hire somebody to help you redo the process. Hire somebody to help you with each stage of the sales process. Because there is nothing mystical or magical about sales. It is a process. But the process is not about telling slick lies and getting people to be tricked into buying your stuff. The process is to orderly and systematically create a funnel where people go into it, they go through the stages, they come out the bottom, and they hand you their money. With luck, you are beginning to build campaigns, beginning to document your funnel. If you have any questions about any of this, anything we've covered in the last 5 videos, 6 videos now, you let me know in the comments down below or send me an email. I'm very happy to go through whatever questions anybody might have. So with that, please go to the cheekysalescoach.com website. There's links there to the podcast and to the videos. You can go review all of that information absolutely for free. Please send me your feedback, and in the meantime, I wish you the best sales possible. Thank you for listening to the cheekysalescoach.com. Call to action. Like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you won't miss a thing.